Greetings, gamer chums. This is the big one. This is Jet Set Willy II, a game that, as a kid, I never thought I could complete. I never even thought I could beat the first one. Nevertheless, here we are. So, for those that don't know the sort of history to it, the original Jet Set Willy had 61 screens, 61 rooms that you had to negotiate, and you had to collect 83 items before your housekeeper lets you go to bed. So Jet Set Willy II is the same premise, only now there are 132 screens, although that's only technically speaking, there's some of them that you don't really visit, and 175 items. Although you can complete the game after having collected 150 of them. I might have mentioned this in a previous playthrough, I'm not sure, but it doesn't hurt to reiterate. So, Jet Set Willy II is a bit different in its mechanics. It's not a Matthew Smith game. It was programmed by a chap named Derek P. Rowson. And he used a completely different source code, so Willy moves faster. The whole game moves faster. The actual character of Willy is a bit more agile in his jumping, not quite stiff. So you couldn't do that in the first game, that sort of back and forth, not as quickly as that. When Willy jumps forward now, in this game, he takes a step at the same time, which he didn't do in the first game. So you do have to watch out for that, because you can screw up. In fact, I'm sure I do screw up based on that. So this is not my first recording of the game. I'd practiced it long enough to the point where I thought, okay, it's time to try and do some recordings. The first recording I did ended in the most unspeakably cruel way a game could end. Because I thought I'd actually done it. For the first time in my life, I thought I'd beaten this game. I'd collected 150 items and was making my way back to the master bedroom, by which time I had exhausted all my lives. I had no extra lives. And sure enough, the master bedroom was clear. Maria was not blocking the door, as she normally does. So I walked in. I forgot completely that you're not supposed to touch the pillow of the bed, because it kills you. So I walked into the pillow, lost my last life, game over. That sucked. However, I remained undaunted, so the following night I tried again, and this was the result. At long last, a playthrough, and I actually finally beat the game. Yeah, I was pretty stoked to do it, because it must be the hardest game I have ever beaten. And it really is an incredible challenge. I would imagine that absolutely the hardest challenge you could do on this game is to not only collect all 175 items, but to do a no-death run. I'm not even sure if that's possible. I'll explain why later. Those who have seen my Jet Set Willy I playthrough will know that it's not possible to beat that game without losing one life. You have to sacrifice one in the conservatory roof. But on Jet Set Willy II, it's been slightly modified so you don't have to lose any lives. You can see there, it looks a bit different, and in fact it is. So because the game is so much bigger than the first game, some of the older screens have been modified to make them easier, and there are some hellishly difficult ones that have been added. One modification you'll see is in this screen. The arrow fires almost immediately in Jet Set Willy I. In this game, you can actually get all the way out of the room before it fires. I hope you don't mind that I turned off the music, it's just that, it goes on for over 40 minutes. In fact, I think I tortured you plenty enough with the Jet Set Gertie music. If you haven't checked that out, go and check it out. So there, collect one item in the cold store. But why not the others? How intriguing. You'll find out later, because I don't do it that way. I collect that one item because of where it is, but because of the way I approach, I go all the way around, and I don't pick up that item from the other side. That sounds like complete gibberish, I know, but it'll make sense. This screen, the wine cellar, is one of my least favourite in Jet Set Willy II because of that forward jump thing. You have to be so careful. You have to be particularly careful when you get down to that level that I'm on now. Because if you fall while you're here, it won't kill you. But you'll miss that object that's on the platform I'm about to collect there. If you miss that, you are so screwed. Because the only way to get it is to go all the way around. And you'll see how many screens that is. I'm not sure how many it is, but it's got to be at least, I don't know, 15 or 20 or something. And they're murderous. I mean, this is one of the ones you've got to go through. So yeah, you'd have to go all the way around to collect that item, and then you'd have to go all the way around to get out again. So you don't want to miss. The Forgotten Abbey is no harder than it was in the first game, and no easier. It moves faster, but it's still not any harder. I do it a slightly different way, because it was just too risky to do it the way I was doing it in the first game. So the way I gauge where the monks are going to move is, of course, by the lettering at the bottom of the screen, just like in the first game. They move in the same way, so when I was teaching myself to play this game, that was one of the screens I didn't have to study too hard. This is my possibly least favourite screen in the game. It's the most boring, because you've got all these tiny platforms, and it's so much toing and froing. It's not fun. It's just tedious. And all you get for it is one item. The trip switch itself is important for what comes later. And from what I read, the whole trip switch thing was born out of a myth that arose from the first game. The story goes that a rumour spread that when you picked up the two objects in the yacht in Jet Set Willy I, the yacht sailed away to a desert island. That was, of course, not true, but the myth somehow found its way back to Software Projects, who then decided to put it into the second game. But you have to go a long way to make it work. As a kid, I don't believe I ever actually did it. I never got from the trip switch all the way back to the yacht. There is a poke that you can put into the game that takes you to a screen called Cheat, and you walk across Cheat and it gets you to the deserted isle. So the Cheat screen is technically one of the 132 screens that make up the game. Of course, we won't be visiting it on this playthrough because I have used no cheats, no pokes, no nothing like that. It's just a legitimate playthrough. So some people don't bother with that object in Potty Pot Plant, but because it's not that hard, I like to go and get it. There's one later, actually coming up fairly soon, it's very risky to get it, but I don't know, I just enjoy going for it. Now, because you have the option of not collecting 25 objects in the game, that means there are certain rooms you don't have to visit. So, for example, people who know this game will have noticed that I didn't do the Nightmare Room. So I chose the one I'm about to do over the Nightmare Room. I do tend to alternate. On some playthroughs, I would do the Nightmare Room, but on this occasion I chose not to, and instead I'm going this way. Even though this object takes longer to get to, longer to get away from, and is much more dangerous. Not that the nightmare room is a picnic. It really isn't. So yep, you go up and up and up. It didn't take me that long to figure out Wongus Village Tray, actually. I kind of lucked out with it. I love doing that, though. I love the high-risk bit. I probably wouldn't dare do it if this screen were later in the game. Because when you get far enough into this game, you just as a matter of reflex, start playing very cautiously. Because you go so far, and you just don't want to blow it. So the zoo, very quick screen. Once you know what to do, just in and out. I always feel that once I've done from the wine cellar to under the mega tree, if I get there with at least 5 lives, I feel like it's a good run so far. So, spoiler alert, I actually get to the mega tree having lost no lives on this run. So I felt like I felt very sort of encouraged by that, and I'm not even sure I'd ever done it before, because you do go through some fairly lethal screens. These ones aren't too bad, but you know, I managed to do the Forgotten Abbey and the wine cellar unscathed. There's one coming up called the Decapitaire, which is very, very risky. So this screen here, into Rat Hole, right next to it is a screen called Down to Pit. And there is an object in there which I'm not going to go for. I'm not even going to look at the screen. It's just way too risky. So that's one of the ones I opted out of. All those blue platforms there, by the way, are conveyor belts. So you have to know how to work them. You have to know how to get through. So that switch there makes the monk move. And the next screen is the dreaded Decapitaire. I'm usually fairly good at it, so just quick in and out. You know, I sort of practiced it so much that my reflexes were sufficient that I could do it without having to think too hard. And your reward is 10 objects in money bags, which really helps you feel like you're making progress. Back to one of the old screens from the original game, the security guard. If I come to think of it, this and the next 2 screens, 3 in fact, are all from the original. Now that screen under the drive is easier on this game than it was on the first. You had to make a pixel perfect jump from that conveyor belt. On this one you've got a lot more leeway, which is a relief. Although it still contains my least favourite jump in the whole game, which you'll be seeing soon enough. Patience, my friends. Yeah, so this bit's not any different really. Faster obviously, but not any harder. So that, as you can see, is easier. If I'd have jumped from there on the first game, I wouldn't have made it. This jump here, I hate this jump so much. Got to get it just right. You got to do a full stretch jump just before that green sprite can get to you. It's my least favourite jump in the whole game. And if you mess that jump up, you respawn on the platform inside the green ball thing, and that's it. Game over. So I was very relieved to get this far, having not lost a single life. So this part, if you're careful, not too bad. You stay away from the white bits in the tree. Next door to this, to the right of this, is the bridge, and then a deadly screen called the garden. It is super, super deadly because you're on a conveyor belt as soon as you walk in, and you have to make 4 very precise jumps. There's absolutely no margin for error. Your reward for doing it is that you get the 1 object that's in there and the 12 objects in the off license. I can understand them I can understand them making that so inaccessible, because if you collect those 13 objects, then there's whole sections of the map you just don't have to visit. And I've looked at it. Willy eventually goes into space, as many of you will know, and there's several of the space screens that you wouldn't have to visit if you got those 13 objects. But it's just so unbelievably risky. I'd rather just do it this way. I'd rather do the space screens, because it just seems to be mostly blind luck if you can get through the garden. One of the differences here, that arrow. There was no arrow in Out on a Limb on the first game, and it fires pretty frequently now. You've got to be extra careful. So I tend to wait. That was damn close. I remember thinking that. I was thinking, just don't push your luck. Do you have any idea how hard this game is? I do. I do have any idea of how hard this game is. I have every idea. So that takes care of the mega tree. And once I get past, there's a screen coming up called... Oh, what's it called? The one with loads of objects in it. Butler's Pantry, that's it. Butler's Pantry. Once I get past that, I tend to feel like the worst is behind me. That is how I feel about it. Just doing all those underground screens. Now you see I left the screen there because I'd thrown off my timing. But I think I lose a life here anyway because I just made a foolish mistake. Jumped there at exactly the wrong time. Barely survived the second time. So yeah, like I was saying, the underground screens are fairly nightmarish. You'll see you probably noticed there was one there again that I didn't do, which is the highway to hell. Just can't stand that screen, so I didn't even try learning it. As an alternative, I guess, I picked something like Wonga's spillage tray, or one of the objects in space that most people are reluctant to get, or maybe that one in Potty Pot Plant. It doesn't really matter, they're interchangeable. But I knew I just didn't want to do that screen, and I'd need something to substitute for it. So, managed to collect all the objects in Butler's Pantry in one go. I don't always manage it, but I got the jumping just right there. It's not actually that hard. It was one of the ones that wasn't that hard for me to work out because you can stop yourself on the moving platforms. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word conveyor belt. I guess moving platform will do. To the kitchen! This is pretty much the same as in the first game. Same principle, really. If you get in there quick, you can get the objects and leave. So now is not the time to climb through the kitchen to the banyan tree. I'll be doing that later. I discovered also, if you're trying to speed run, you can forgo the one in the banyan tree, but it means you have to get one of the riskier ones in space. Now you see that maneuver I did there? I actually passed through that green penguin. That's a slight glitch in the game that you can exploit, but it doesn't always work. Your jump has to be very precise. If you're there half a heartbeat too long, the penguin kills you. I kind of discovered that by accident. But risky as it is, it works, so I tried it. These four down here are tricky as hell. And I actually did a maneuver this time that I'd never done before. I actually kind of threw caution to the wind on this one, so I got those ones. And normally what I do is collect the other two following the green ball, and then I come back, so I've got more space. to jump past it, but on this occasion I combined the two. I just collected the object and jumped past the green ball, and I was astonished that it worked. Not sure if I'd make a habit of it. So, back to the sewers. There are some incredibly fast-moving enemies in this game. Now that was dumb, that was just plain dumb. I just got so jumpy, like literally jumpy. Because usually when I get to this stage in the game, I get a bit nervous, because 88 objects is a lot. It's more than are in the first game. I hate jumping over this green guy. I don't know why, it's just not... just doesn't make me comfortable, like I feel like I'm not going to make it. So I was quick enough that I could get out of the sewer before the arrow. Now as a kid, I never knew how to collect that top object. I could never figure it out. But I figured it out this time. Whoop! You just do that. The one at the bottom is the one I mentioned earlier. I don't know how you get that without losing a life. And I've tried. Complete mystery to me. Maybe it can be done, maybe it can't. I'm sure there are some pros out there who know. Don't like collecting the one on the beach, because you've got to land in just the right place or the crabs get you. And I don't know, I feel the collision is a bit off. So the tool shed, you do this slightly differently to in the first game. In the first game you do have to wait a bit to get the right timing. But I discovered with this game, it's best to just go straight away. As a kid, I never got this far. I never got to return to the yacht after hitting the trip switch, but here we are. I have 6 lives. So it's best to collect the wheel first. Not sure why, but it's sort of become a superstition now. I feel like people have said you have to collect the wheel first, so I do. I think the reason being, if you collect the anchor first, the yacht will take off and you won't have collected the wheel, so you'll have missed an object. So you got to follow very closely behind the saw, closer than you had to in the first game, and then run away and bing! That's the noise a yacht makes when it sails off. Bing! And then we find ourselves in the deserted isle. And all you can do is wait. You collect the object and just stand there. Maybe I'll throw in a musical interlude at this point. And we're back. So I remember cheating as a kid to get to this screen and collecting that object and then having no idea what you're supposed to do. So I figured that it was a trap. I never knew there was a teleport there. No, I was pretty dumb as a kid. I never figured anything out. So now's the time to do some of the space screens. Not all of them. So the top 2 pads take you somewhere. The one on the right takes you to the bathroom. The one on the left brings you here. So there are some screens here that I will be bypassing, which, if you're sane and you intend to beat this game, you'll pass too. More on them in a minute. So that red bit's a conveyor belt. That red bit isn't. So I found that the best thing with Galactic Invasion is to just go straight away. It's your best bet for getting through. Now I believe... yeah, this is where it starts. This is That object you see there, no freaking way am I getting that. It's insanely difficult. Look at the speed of those pigs, and that hole in the ground leads to another screen, 2 screens rather, called The Hole with No Name and The Secret Passage. There are 4 objects to get down there, but just forget about it. It's ridiculously hard to even get down there. I mean, you'd have to be pretty hardcore to want those ones over some of the others. I think I throw a life away here. Yep, bad jump. So yeah, invisible stairs there. Looney Jet Set, obviously a reference to Lunar Jetman. Not a game I've really played, actually. I played Jetpack a lot and might end up doing a playthrough of it. Eggoids. I remember when I was a kid thinking this screen just looked impossible. But it's really not that bad. You know, you can see where the enemies are going to go because they're bouncing off the walls. And those little green platforms are the tiniest conveyor belts in the game. Don't know why, but there they are. So that takes care of the first portion of the space bit. So I now have 102 items. So by this time I was feeling like I had a serious chance of doing it. Teleport back to the bathroom. My work here is not done. So yeah, there's a bit to do before I can go back up into space. It's funny, it feels like it's got a different atmosphere when you come back, you know, because you're much further into the game. You're far closer to the end than you are to the start. So again, ignoring the nightmare room, because that can finish you off really quickly. So now it's time to negotiate the kitchens and climb up the banyan tree. I could have jumped under that, I probably would have had the time, but like I said, I just started playing very cautiously at this stage. Again, I probably could have jumped under that. But you just feel a bit less devil may care when you're this far into Jet Set Willy II. It just has that effect on you. Even the most gung-ho player becomes cautious on this one. I'm so careful on the last couple of jumps. Don't want to fall. I hate it when I do that. When I jump up instead of forward. And it has been the death of me so many times. On all 3 of the Willy games. Up we go. Up. And into a bit of tree. The difference being here that in the first game an arrow fired while you were climbing. I'm not even sure if an arrow does fire on this game, but you get through it quickly enough that it doesn't get you. So here is the now non-lethal conservatory. I know that looks dangerous, but to me it's the easiest way to do it, rather than do a standing jump to collect the items. So yeah, you don't have to lose a life there anymore, which is nice. Main difference in the orangery, no arrow fires. In the first game it did. And if you're quick enough, you could get through it before the second arrow fired. Or before the arrow fired a second time, rather. Time to go up. 110 items, only 40 more to go. On one of my run-throughs I did lose it here because I jumped into that green blob. That green face thing. And it took all my lives. And I just thought, what a ridiculous place to end it. So when I was young, of course, I tried to climb all the ropes to see if there was anything above. But that room there, there's no object above there, there's no room above there. The rope just sort of catches you at the top. On this screen, however, you do go up, but we're not ready to do that. Heavens no! There is work to be done. So that's one more. Now, in the original Jet Set Willy, if you jumped from that conveyor belt, you kind of teleported to the Ballroom West. On this game, it takes you to the Belfry, which I'm not doing. It's one of the screens that I sort of sometimes do and sometimes just dodge. On this occasion, I chose not to do it. It is a hard screen, and you only get one object for all your efforts. So no Belfry. It's time to launch ourselves into space. Nope, that was a dumbass thing to do. It's those fast ones, I just never quite mastered them. So yeah, I was getting a bit nervous here because I was going at the wrong time. And I was worried the arrow would come back, but I got out just before it did. So, the Watchtower. Now, fans of the original game will know that if you jump from the conveyor belt in the Watchtower, it takes you back to the off license. That was another dumbass mistake. You actually don't want to do that. I'm almost certain you don't want to do it that way. On this game, however, it takes you to the Rocket Room. So now we're approaching the final portion of the game. So as I said, if you'd done the garden and the off-license, from this screen onwards, this screen to the right, you don't have to do any of it. If you'd collected those objects, you'd already have enough to not even bother. But of course that means you'd have to do the garden, and the garden just sucks. Look at me, look how cautious I'm being. I'm so scared. Because I think if I'd failed on this run, I probably would have left it for a few days just to clear my head before trying again. Just waiting. Yeah, I got a bit nervous there. I left the room very quickly because I wanted to set up my timing. I think I got this jump wrong. If you do it right, you land on that bottom green platform, but I missed this time and lost one of my valuable lives. So it still felt a bit daunting, but I still felt I was in with a chance, even though I had only 2 lives left. I was dreading practicing this screen actually, but I mastered it quicker than I thought I would. I discovered that all you have to really do is follow each tribble on its return trajectory and jump the gaps when you need to. So it wasn't as hard as I thought. This is similar to an earlier screen called The Highway to Hell, which I mentioned, but I chickened out of that one. I thought one of these was enough. And from the Highway to Hell, you only get one object. If you go down from that screen, you are dead, because you end up in the entrance to Hades and will die. Whereas this screen takes you up, and there's a few more objects you can get. So someone else, this isn't too hard. It gives the illusion that you need to keep jumping over those purple things, but since you can collect the items from underneath, you really don't have to. And then onto the lift. The lifts themselves can be dangerous if you jump to them from the wrong angle. They can kill you, which makes them terrifying. Speaking of terrifying, I've already shown you my least favourite jump in the game. You're about to see the scariest jump in the game, which is this one. And I had only 2 lives left, so I really couldn't afford to get this wrong. Go! Hubba 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 hubba. Whew! Oh my god, that is terrifying. So yeah, I was so relieved to make it. And that one's pretty tight as well, you've got to be damn careful. So this screen, Star Drive, virtually every platform is a conveyor belt. There's only one portion of the screen that isn't, and it's that. Everything else is. Just that one yellow portion of floor. I remember as a kid it took me a while to work out how you get out of there. The only reason I ever got to this screen as a kid was through cheating, I believe. Now, when I was young, I never even came close to beating this game. I never even dared think I could. I just used to like exploring it, and I never saw all the screens back then. So getting back down through Trouble with Tribbles is not that hard. I discovered it fairly quickly. I thought the first thing I should do is make my way to the right, and then just see when the holes appeared and drop down. So it wasn't too bad. And the shuttle bay as well. It took me a few goes to work out how to get up, but not to get down. It wasn't that hard. Again, this is another timely jump, but you jump a bit later now because you're not trying to collect the items. You're just trying to get here. So very, very close to the end now. Nervous as hell. But still a few scary screens to get through. So 2 relatively easy objects here. Bip. Nice. And as you can see, the cartography room, which is determined, the pattern of it is determined by how many screens you've visited and the items you've collected. So every green square is a room I'd been to and collected the items in. If you haven't done enough of them, you can't get the object that's in the cartography room itself. It's pretty cool. It's a cool thing to put in the game. So I was being very cautious here in the photon tube, especially because of that green menace going up and down. So here's another scary lift. If you don't jump there at the right time, you really are done for. It's such a stupid, senseless way to lose a life. And the problem is you have to negotiate it twice, because you have to collect that object that's up there. So past the scary teacups. So sometimes when I've got this far, I got a bit punchy and I'd move in too quickly, which is just as fatal as moving too late. In this screen, the 3 arrows come at you. If you're standing to the far right, they'll just miss you. So before I can head left to the teleport, I've got to head right and collect some more. The last few objects. 9 more objects. Just 9. Now, I got a bit scared there because I thought I jumped too early for that bottom arrow, but no, it was okay. Like I said, you just feel a bit punchy by this stage. So next to the sick bay, I almost made a mistake here because you have to collect that top object first. Because once you collect the second object, the foot comes down. So I realized I'd done it wrong and I ran out of the room. Well, the whole bottom floor is a conveyor belt. I dodged away from the bottom object and collected the top one first. You're forced to leave the room before you can go back. If I'd done that, if I'd collected the bottom one, I would not have been able to collect the top one. Because I wouldn't have been able to escape the room in time. And my run would be over. But if I did escape in time, having just collected the bottom foot, it would mean I'd have to seek an alternative for my 150th object. And there are alternatives, but they are risky. Very few objects in this game are not risky. I realised at this point that I'd missed my timing. I didn't go when I normally went, so I kind of had to go with my instincts. Which proved to be very positive in this case. But I really wish I'd stuck with my timing. I know where I am then. Now with the arrows in the next room, I never really knew when they were coming. I just used to stand there and then jump, panicky, woo! It's amazing that didn't hit me. So 2 objects here, little joysticks. Well, that one wasn't, it was a bottle. Now that's where I screwed up. I jumped too far and I thought, oh crap. What a waste. So I'm on my last life. And it ain't over yet. I decided to eschew that object there in favour of the ones that were remaining. I think I just sort of stood still for a minute thinking, what do I do? Which ones can I get? Yep, I can do it. You can see the thought process, can't you? But it does mean getting one very risky one. The one next to that sort of wheelie thing. I don't know what the hell it's supposed to be. So only 2 objects left, one of which is easy to get, one of which is somewhat trickier. So let's go for it. Last object. I was scared as hell doing this. Go! Oh, phew! Oh, the relief. All I had to do now was get back to the bathroom. For the love of God, don't stand on the left pad. I'd rather hoped I would get to the end with some lives left in the bank, but when I got here I just thought, screw it, I'll take what I've got. And this time I was absolutely determined that I would not make the terrible, terrible mistake I made the first time. So under that spinny thing, no Maria, jump onto the bed, avoid the pillow, and I lose control of Willy. Most men lose control of their willies at some point in their lives. And he makes his way automatically back across the map. So at this point I was just sort of sitting back, hands behind my head, watching the action unfurl. So instead of sticking his head down the toilet like he does in the first game, oh beep! The central cavern! And I just laughed. I mean, I've seen this before, I knew what happened, but I laughed because I'd done it. I'd finally done it. What began in Central Cavern ended in Central Cavern. I'm very glad I was able to complete the trilogy, and I'm very glad you were here to witness it.